I almost felt like at one point saying, look, Anthony, it's fine, you know, because he had to wear a completely different wig as the master, and sometimes he'd insist on wearing the wig over the toupee, which really just did not work. And he sometimes caused a bit of problems. And the other thing I loved about him was playing the most evil man in the universe, he was the biggest coward in the world. There was a scene in The Five Doctors where I think the Cybermen had to attack us and had to blow up a rock near us. We were both standing there, and special effects, as usual, said to us, look, it's just going to be a little puff of smoke. Nothing more, don't worry, a little puff of smoke. Well, you know, if the BBC special effects say to you it's going to be a puff of smoke, you know it's going to be an enormous explosion. And there was an enormously loud bang, and I sort of turned and flinched. I turned back, and Anthony Henry had run away. He just ran away, hidden behind a rock. So there was something deeply ironic about the most evil man in the universe being a big fat coward. But he was great. He was very, very nice, and would tell wonderfully theatrical stories to us to keep us occupied during rehearsal days. Yeah.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
I had a question about, I read a couple of years ago that somebody broke into your vehicle and stole the camcorder.
Yes.
It contained your son's birth, and you actually tracked it down. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, yes. What happened was, it was on the day this was the article that appeared in the newspaper. What in fact happened was I'd taken my video camera up to the hospital. My son had been born that day to film the newborn babe, and discovered when I got there that the battery was flat. So actually there was nothing of my child on the camera at all, but I left it on the back seat of my car foolishly. I came back home, parked the car outside, and then I went inside and I heard this sort of bang and then somebody shout. So I went outside to see what was going on, and the woman across the road said, "He broke into your car, he went that way." So I jumped into my car. I am not a hero, let me just say, I'm not a brave person at all. So I drove around a circuitous route where he was running, and almost managed to catch him in a place called Belsize Park. So I jumped out of the car, left the door swinging open, and I ran, chased him up this road. No clue what I was going to do if I caught him. I never thought I was going to catch him. I mean, he was young and very fast. And he made the mistake of turning down a cul-de-sac, which basically is a no-entry road. So suddenly I found myself, when he realised he couldn't get out, coming face to face with this guy. I don't know who was more surprised, him or me, but I caught him. So I said to him, "Did you steal my camcorder?" And he said, "Get away from me." Which I thought is not really what you'd say if you haven't stolen a camcorder. So then I said, okay, I said, okay, let me have it back. So he tried to get past me and I grabbed him. And this is the thing that goes through my head. I just don't know what I was thinking. He said to me, "Get away from me, I've got a knife." Now he had quite a big jacket on with long sleeves, so he could easily have a knife. And then he started going like that, at me like that. Now you'd think this would be terrifying, but I remember thinking, when he did this, he made a noise. He went, shh, shh. I remember thinking, do you make the noise of a knife if you actually have a knife? So I came to the conclusion in an instant, no, I think he's faking it. So I sort of jumped on him and sat on him for about a half an hour until the police arrived and took him away.
Oh my God.
So it came over as if it was a very brave thing to do, but it was, in a way, it was completely stupid. And it was only the fact, if he hadn't made the noise of a knife, shh, 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 that psycho noise. I'm Alfred Hitchcock. He obviously watched Alfred Hitchcock. He obviously watched it. Shh, shh. Anyway, unfortunately, in the sitting on him, I did manage to break my camcorder. But as I say, fortunately, there was no film of my son on it anyway. But when I told the newspaper, somehow got hold of it, and when they said, you know, had you been up to the hospital? I did tell them that I went up to the hospital to film my son, but the battery was flat. But they didn't print that. They thought it was more dramatic. They said, "Peter Davison rescues camcorder of newborn son." Anyway, it was interesting.
Before I take the next question, do you think if you'd have told the thief that you were the doctor, he would have handed it to you immediately?
Well, you know, he did. I think he did know who I was. At least, I mean, at some point, because he said to me, it was odd when I was sitting on him. He went from through all sorts of kind of emotions. Get off me, I'm going to kill you, to please don't tell my mum. And then he did say something about...
Oh my gosh.
I know what it was. When the newspaper rang up, what happened was, when the police had put him in the cell, you know they have stringers in police stations, and the reason the press found out about it was the fact that when he was in the cell, he'd been calling out, you only locked me up because I stole the doctor's camera. As if it would have been fine if it was anyone else's camera. So then one of the policemen rang up a stringer from the Sun and said, you know, I think we got someone who stole a Doctor Who's camera. And that's how I got in the newspapers. But it was very exciting. I got interviewed by a television company, came around the next day, and then they interviewed me for a very short time outside my house. And then they had a whole bit where the woman walked around the bit where it happened, and they said, it was down this cul-de-sac. It's the most bizarre thing. For a moment I was really famous, for the right reasons. Oh, he's just telling me the time, it's around 11:40. All right, another question.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
May
I ask two questions? One should be short.
Okay.
But the first one is, there was an episode where you and David Tennant were on the TARDIS.
Well, what? Sorry.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. You couldn't hear me?
I couldn't quite hear you.
Okay. There was an episode where you and David Tennant were on the TARDIS. And David Tennant is telling you, basically, that, you know, you were his doctor.
Yes.
And I wanted to know what was going through your mind.
Well, it was this time crash you're talking about, which is a thing for children in need. And Stephen Moffat just came to me one day and said, you know, would you do a short film for children in need, which is a charity night. And he gave me the script. I just thought it was a brilliant script because it worked on two levels. One is, as you say, the 10th Doctor remembering being the 5th Doctor, but also David remembering watching me on the telly. It was very moving, I think, and I had enormous fun doing it. I felt a bit like an imposter because it was David's TARDIS, but it wasn't like the old days. They didn't wheel it into television centre. You know, this was a fantastically built set. But you know, this is, I think, before sort of Georgia and he got together, and but he was fantastic. It was great to do. It was very moving. I thought it was a very clever script. Yes. Oh, no, another one, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Now, I might be wrong, but on your lapel, you always had celery.
Yes.
And I remember hearing once that it turned purple.
Yes.
And you had to eat it if you
Yeah.
were allergic to something. What were you allergic to?
What?
What were you allergic to?
I was allergic to certain gases in the praxis range. Doesn't everyone know that?
Yes.
No, what happened was John Nathan Turner came up with the idea of the celery as something eccentric for the Doctor to wear on his lapel, and I said, well, that's fine as long as you explain it before I leave. And then we got to the very last story, and I suddenly remembered he'd never explained it. So they went away and they came up with this explanation right at the end of Caves of Androzani, which explains the celery. And I thought it was actually a pretty good explanation, but it was very much sort of at the last minute things. I'd reminded them. I actually hate celery too. Fortunately, mine wasn't real. Okay, or maybe it was just Gallifreyan celery, I don't know. Yes.
Hi. Two questions.
Yes.
Do you think we'll ever see an extended director's cut of the Five-ish Doctors?
Well,
and or a sequel?
All I'd say about that is if I come up with a good enough idea, I'd love to do a sequel, but I just have to come up with a good enough idea. And I just wouldn't want it to be a sort of, like a sequel, like most sequels. I'd like it to be Godfather 2, Jaws 2 wasn't one of them, something like that. Anyway, extended cut, well, I did say to them, if they made me cut it. When we'd shot it, we had about 38 minutes of stuff, I think, and we cut it right down, but then they did try and make me really cut it. They said, no, we think it should be 15 minutes long. And I said, I can't do this. Because they'd said to me all the way along, this is your project, we want you to be happy, and then they tried to cut it. So we had quite a interesting editing process, where fortunately, I have to say, I won most of the battles. So there's not very much. I have got like maybe 3 short scenes, which I'll put up once it goes out on DVD on the internet somewhere. But it's really not much, and probably I might well have cut it anyway because it didn't really work. But there was a gag about